Okay, I just sent the link in for the Google Slides. We'll get started with the vocab. Nathan, can you go ahead and read the first word?
Manic, adjective, affected, affected by mania, is extremely or excessively happy, busy, active, argument, or nervous energy. Chaperones are suspicious of manic behavior in teens at dances for been drinking.
Okay, and Liam, can you go ahead and read the second word?
Manifesto, a public written declaration of principles and policies and objectives, often issued by a political movement, candidate, or leader. The Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels inspired a political and economic movement that lasted decades, yet ultimately proved finite.
Okay, just to go over the pronunciation. Again, the main word we're looking at is manifesto. Again, manifesto. And then the last word over here, they wrote proved finite. So it's practically the opposite of infinite, right? So a finite supply is something that can end or come to an end. But here they're talking about the economic movement. They're saying it did last decades, but eventually it proved finite, meaning eventually it had its own end. Okay, and Kevin, can you go ahead and read the third word?
Marginal. Very small in scale or importance is written in a margin, not of central importance or relevance, close to the lowest acceptable value of the limit. In business terms, barely able to cover the costs of production when sold when producing goods for sale, not truly profitable. Trudy studied harder, but there were only marginal improvements in her grade, so she agreed to get a tutor.
Nathan, can you go ahead and read the last word?
More to die rather than deny religious, political, or other strong beliefs. Sacrifices to advance a cause or principle. Seeking to be kamikaze pilots of war explosive laden planes into enemy targets.
Okay. Uh, yeah, you were cutting a little bit in and out there, so I just want to make sure everyone heard the pronunciation. It's murder, again, murder. So it's someone who chooses to die rather than deny religious, political, or other strong beliefs. Okay, for the activity, I want everyone to write a sentence using each of the following words. Make sure to include enough context. You can also write it in the form of a paragraph oriented around the same topic. Before we get started, does anyone have any questions about the activity or the words we took a look at? Okay, right now the time is about 7:05. We'll work on this until 7:10. If anyone does have any questions at any point, feel free to ask me. Hey, Austin, I see that you just joined in. I'm just going ahead and sending the link into the chat. We just took a look at these four words: manic, manifesto, marginal, and murder. If you do have any questions about any of the 4 words, feel free to ask me. We're taking up this activity at 7:10. Hey, Kevin, can you go ahead and read your response?
Manic. The kid has a very manic behavior before going to Disneyland. Manifesto. The city's manifesto was written by a group of lawyers. Marginal. The kid's basketball skills improved marginally, so he did not make the team. Martyr. Most Japanese soldiers during World War II would have become martyrs and prisoners of war to avoid shaming the families and themselves.
Okay. I do want to just go over some small corrections, starting off with the kid had a very manic behavior. It just sounds kind of awkward. Instead, you could write the kid exhibited manic behavior. That would be better. Okay, and manifesto. The city's manifesto was written by a group of lawyers. Okay. And then I did want to go over some other corrections over here as well. Yeah. Okay. So most these you did okay, yeah. I think you just made those corrections. I was just looking over because I noticed some spelling mistakes before, but I think those corrections were made. Rather become murderers than yeah, it was just this one correction. The way you worded or the way you wrote the kid had a very manic behavior. It just wouldn't make sense in the context of the word. So writing exhibited is a much better word choice. Other than that, great job. And everyone else, please make sure you're sending in your responses as well. I've only gotten 2 as of now. And Liam, can you go ahead and read your response?
Probably made a marginal improvement due to bad form. If you jump off a cliff, do not admit something, you are a mad turd. My friend acts very manic every time he comes to my house. There was a manifesto made by a country.
Okay. All right, just want to go over, okay, just small correction over here. It should be this spelling for there. Just make this red to remember. The only thing I would really want to, okay, I would also remove berry in this sentence. It just feels like an unnecessary word. My friend acts manic every time he comes to my house is good enough. And then I would correct this sentence over here, and I want to write an explanation for why. The reason is because a murder is someone who sacrifices something for a strong belief. So make sure to have context to make sense of this, or like context to show this idea. So if you jump off a cliff to not emit something, that doesn't automatically make you a murderer. And the reason is because there has to be a strong belief, something, their own agenda that they're kind of tied to. So their perspective does have to be tied back to any strong belief. For example, if you were to write, the person jumped off a cliff because they did not want to speak against their religion, then they would be considered a murder. So make sure you add the necessary context to just make sense of that word. Okay, and Nathan, can you go ahead and read your response?
Christian martyr manically was happy to object the manifesto that was not marginal.
Okay. Okay, I just want to go over some corrections. All right, just in terms of the wording, the Christian murder was okay. Here, what would happen is we'll just have to shift the order of the word was manically happy to object manifesto that was not marginal. Okay. Just to make this grammatically correct, object to the manifesto, which was not marginal, rather than that. Okay. And in general, for next time, I'm just gonna try to write a minimum of 3 sentences. Enough context is needed for each of the words. Okay, and Austin, I still have not received your response. It is 6 minutes past the take-up time, so we're just gonna go ahead and move on to the next activity. We're starting off with an interpretation for a quote, which will also lead us into an article. And the article is based off Oppenheimer and the atomic bomb that was created. So the quote is, "The atomic bomb made the prospect of future war unendurable, has led us up those last few steps to the mountain pass, and beyond there is a different country." So our goal today, or like for this activity, is to make sense of this quote. I want everyone to write their interpretation on this quote and make a connection to the quote that is text to world, or text to self. Use any relevant knowledge you might have about the historical event this quote is in relation to. Oh, extra O. We'll work on this activity for 5 minutes, and before we get started, does anyone have any questions? Okay, whoever's I'm pretty sure I know who it is. Nathan, I don't want you touching any of the slides, deleting any of the slides, or changing the names. It gets changed every week, and it's extremely frustrating and annoying. Um, I don't know, like if I was able to remove just access for one individual, I definitely would go ahead and do that. But Nathan, if this continues, I'm just gonna make sure, like I don't know, like I'm definitely gonna let the academy know about this as well. I've noticed this behavior like multiple different times, and honestly, it's just extremely annoying. So please do not touch the slides, especially when we're in the middle of a lesson. Okay. All right. So yeah, but either way, I will let the academy know and they could have a conversation with your parents. Just because I've noticed this happen too many times. But if this continues on in the class, I will make a serious
I think
issue.
that was an accident. My mouse kind of slipped.
No, you don't change the name every once a week by accident. I'm sorry. You just don't. Okay. So right now it's 7:18. We're gonna work on this activity until 7:23. If anyone has any questions at any point, feel free to ask me. But yeah, otherwise we'll take this up at 7:23. Kevin, can you go ahead and read your response?
I think this quote means that the atomic bomb changed the history and relationships of different countries and made it so that any war in the future would be very scary. I can connect with this as right now a nuclear war would destroy the world in seconds.
Okay. All right. So I would change just certain little parts. Very scary is just too general of a statement. You can be much more specific in how it changes the scope of a war.
Pardon.
And then I can connect with this as okay. And rather than it being something where you blatantly suggest I can connect with this, rather it can be a connection that you make. Like this code can connect to the current realities of the world because any war that happens or any nuclear war that happens would destroy parts of the world in seconds. So rather than, okay, I'm just gonna cross this out and write it over here. Okay. And everyone else, I'm still waiting on your responses. It is 7:24, 1 minute past the take-up time. Please make sure you do send your responses into the chat or paste it onto the slides. I'm just going to give 1 more minute until 7:25. And it's fine if you didn't get to finish your full response. It's just an interpretation on a quote. This is just a warm-up activity until we get into the main article. Okay, Liam, can you go ahead and read your response?
From my point of view, I believe the atomic bomb made the prospect of the future war unendurable. It has led us to those last few steps to the mountain, passing beyond there. The different country means that the invention of the nuclear bomb would make war way worse than before, and there would be a country hungry for power which would misuse the nuclear bomb.
Okay. Okay, so one thing I would avoid is, especially for like quick interpretation activities, avoid completely restating the quote. And then these 2 points are kind of redundant from my point of view, and then going on to state, I believe that the quote, you can just have one or the other. So let's cross this out. And then over here means that the invention would make war way worse than before. So here you have to specify on this information is too general, specify too general. There would be a country hungry for power, which would misuse the nuclear bomb. And over here, I'm going to write, and there would be a country. It just seems too specific. So instead, you could just write, and there would be countries hungry for power that would misuse the nuclear bomb. Okay. Because, more than one country can have access to nuclear weapons. So it's more than just one country that can possibly misuse the power. And Nathan, can you go ahead and read your response?
The atomic bomb killed many people and makes war unendurable because it will kill thousands of people and it is unstoppable. It is frightening to many people and it could be misused in many different ways. War will be very unsafe in the modern times.
Okay, good job with your response. This sentence, it is frightening to many people and it can be misused in many different ways. It could just be a little bit more specific. So I'm just going to try and focus on specific ideas of how exactly this can change scope of work, or how exactly this changes the scope of work. Okay, and Austin, can you go ahead and read your response?
The quote highlights how the atomic bomb changed our view of war, making it seem too devastating to consider. It reminds me of stories I've read about how peace is now more important than ever, as we realize the consequences of conflict can be unimaginable.
Okay. All right, one thing I would write, especially even when you mention it reminds you of stories about how peace is now more important than ever. We need to like get a little bit more ideas of that. Like, so rather than just talking about why peace is more important, we need to talk about why the current realities, or why in the current realities a nuclear bomb makes it almost unpredictable if a war did happen. So try and be more specific as to why the consequences of conflict are more severe now than before. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the article that we're going to be taking a look at, which is, okay, sorry, it's kind of cut off over here, but all right, that's fine. Who is Oppenheimer, the controversial man behind the atomic bomb? All right, so we'll go ahead and we'll get started with the article. I'm just going to have each one of you taking turns reading through the article, and then we're going to jump into the question. So the first question is, in what ways did Julius Robert Oppenheimer's role in the Manhattan Project and the subsequent development of the atomic bomb shape his personal and professional journey? How did it influence his views on the destructive potential of nuclear weapons? You would use the article to directly reference evidence to support your responses. The second question is, do you believe it is ever justifiable to pursue scientific advancements with potentially devastating consequences for humanity in the name of progress? In your opinion, what factors should be taken into account when determining the boundaries of scientific research and its impact on society? Again, same thing, use the article directly to support your response. So we'll get started with the article. I just wanted to go over the questions so everyone kind of has an idea of what to look for.
Teacher Kiyasa,
Oh, hi, David. Yep, I see.
can you please send those slides in the chat? Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay, I just sent in the link, and let me just make you a slide before I forget as well. Oh, get the extra one here. This is perfect. Okay, so we'll get started with the article. Austin, can you go ahead and read the first slide?
New scientific discoveries can ignite curiosity, explain the unknown, and even improve the world. But what happens when a scientist comes to regret the knowledge he's unleashed? This is a central question of the upcoming film Oppenheimer, which recounts American scientist J. Robert Oppenheimer's moonshot project to build an atomic bomb in a top secret lab in the New Mexico desert, and his lifelong qualms about the nuclear age he ushered in. Did the legendary physicist really regret his nuclear creation? The truth is as complicated as the science behind the bomb. Here's how Oppenheimer birthed and questioned the atomic bomb.
Okay, and David, can you go ahead and read this slide?
From child prodigy born in New York City in 1904, Julius Robert Oppenheimer was the son of German-Jewish immigrants who found wealth in the textile importing trade. He graduated from Harvard University summa cum laude after just 3 years of study, then studied theoretical physics at both Cambridge University and the University of Göttingen in Germany, where he gained his doctorate at age 23. The young physicist Oppie had soon rubbed shoulders with the greatest scientific figures of his age, and his academic work advanced quantum theory and predicted everything from the neutron to the black hole. He was a voracious learner outside of the sciences too, learning Sanskrit, studying religion, and aligning himself with a variety of progressive causes. After the United States joined the Allies in 1941, Oppenheimer was asked to participate in the top secret Manhattan Project, whose aims was to develop an atomic weapon. As he endeavored to find out what would need to happen to trigger and sustain the kind of neutron chain reaction needed to create a nuclear explosion, Oppenheimer's superiors were impressed by his wide-ranging knowledge, ambition, and ability to work with and inspire other scientists. In 1942, the U.S. Army called on Oppenheimer to head up to the secret lab where the bomb would be tested.
Okay, and Kevin, can you go ahead and read this slide?
Los Alamos and the Trinity test. As Army officials scouted appropriate places for such a lab, Oppenheimer, who loved the American Southwest and owned a ranch in New Mexico, suggested to decide the Los Alamos Ranch School, a private boys' school near Santa Fe. Soon he oversaw hundreds and thousands of workers at what became known as the Los Alamos Laboratory. Oppenheimer didn't just assemble a group of the most brilliant scientific minds of his time. He inspired, goaded, organized, and pushed them to perform. He was intellectually and even physically present at each step. Physicist Victor Weisskopf later recalled, that presence resulted in a unique atmosphere of enthusiasm and challenge, and a chain reaction of scientific discoveries that produced the world's first nuclear weapon. On July 16, 1945, Oppenheimer and others got the Trinity test site south of Los Alamos for the world's first attempted nuclear blast. It was a tense moment. The scientists knew that the bomb they nicknamed Gadget would shape the future of the war.
Liam, can you go ahead and read this slide?
But they also believed it might bring an end to World War II. Though the war in Europe had ended, U.S. officials feared the war's bloodlust phase was still ahead of them. Assaults against Japan itself. The hope was that the nation would force Japan to surrender instead by threatening to use the new weapon. Conducted in secret, the test worked. As Oppenheimer later recounted it in 1965 interview, the moment had called a mind a line from the Hindu Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him, takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of all worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
Okay, and Nathan, can you go ahead and read this slide?
Bombing Japan and the moral aftermath. August 6th and August 9th, 1945, the U.S. dropped two of the bombs Oppenheimer had helped develop over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. A minimum of 110,000 people are thought to have been killed in the blast, which wiped out both cities on a scale of devastation never seen before since. Our Hiroshima's of this bomb are impossible to forget. Oppenheimer had served on the scientific that recommended the War Department deploy the bomb as soon as possible against Japan. Historical debate whether the government listened to scientists' pleas that the bomb must be deployed against military targets only, or even publicly tested beforehand in an attempt to force Japan's surrender. The night after Hiroshima, shared by a crowd of fellow scientists at Los Alamos, and declared that his only regret was the bomb hadn't finished in time to use against Germany.
Okay, and Austin, can you go ahead and read this slide?
But though they were thrilled by their accomplishment, the scientists were horrified at the loss of civilian lives in the attack, worrying that the future of the weapons would encourage future wars instead of deter them. A few weeks after the bombing, Oppenheimer wrote a letter to the Secretary of the War, warning that the safety of this nation cannot lie wholly or even primarily in its scientific or technical prowess. It can be based only on making future wars impossible. But Oppenheimer also defended the Manhattan Project and the bomb he'd been tasked with the building, arguing that it had been necessary to fully understand the possibilities of nuclear science.
Okay. And David, can you go ahead and read this slide?
Opposition to the hydrogen bomb. Nonetheless, Oppenheimer spent much of his life after the war lobbying for a nuclear deterrence, vocally opposing U.S. attempts to develop a more powerful hydrogen bomb after the USSR made strides with its own bomb. Instead, said Oppenheimer, the U.S. should consider using nuclear weapons only tactically and pursue other uses of nuclear technology like generating power instead. What is nuclear energy and is it a viable resource? This earned him political enemies and put him in the crosshairs of the Red Scare. An American political era of anti-communist hysteria during the Cold War. At an 1854 hearing, looking into his supposed communist sympathies, the Atomic Energy Commission revoked his security clearance. The move was only reversed in 2022 after government officials revisited Oppenheimer's case and found his investigation had been flawed and unlawful.
Okay, and Kevin, can you go ahead and read this slide?
He doesn't slot into easy categories of pro-nuclear, anti-nuclear, or anything like that. Historian Alex Wellerstein told PBS NewsHour he's a tricky figure. Oppenheimer never returned to government service, instead found the Ward Academy of Arts and Science and lecturing on science and ethics until his death in 1967. Though he had helped create the necessary weapon to end the war, destroyed two entire cities, and ushered in a dangerous new age, he lobbied against nuclear proliferation for the rest of his life. In some crude sense, with no vulgarity, no humor, no overstatement, can quite extinguish, he said. In 1950, the physics had known sin, and this is knowledge which they cannot lose.
Okay, great. And just to go over the word proliferation, it is a noun which means rapid increase in numbers. All right, so that brings us into the first question. I'm just going to reintroduce it one more time. In what ways did Julius Robert Oppenheimer's role in the Manhattan Project and the subsequent development of the atomic bomb shape his personal and professional journey? How does it influence his views on the destructive potential of nuclear weapons? Use the article to directly reference evidence to support your responses. Before we get started, does anyone have any questions about the activity or anything we took a look at in the article? Okay, I just want to make this a little bit easier. Just give me 1 second. I'll see if, as long as this isn't a New York Times article, I should be able to, I think it might be New York Times. Yeah, I'll try and see if I can get the link directly for the article. If I do, I'll send it into the chat so you can keep an eye out for that. But if I'm not able to, please just use what's on the slides. I do want you to use direct evidence from the article to support your response. Right now the time is 7:41. We'll work on this activity until about 7:51.
Oh, sorry, I accidentally clicked backspace on this slide.
Yeah, no worries. Let me just which slide was it?
Oh, I fixed it. I fixed it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. Okay. I was able to find the link for the article. This will just make it easier. This way you don't have to directly type from the slides. You could just copy and paste any evidence that you do choose. And yeah, if anyone has any questions at any point, feel free to ask me. Okay, the time is 7:51. Everyone can go ahead and start sending in their responses or pasting it onto the slides. Okay, I still have not received any responses. I'm just going to give 1 to 2 more minutes for everyone to finish up. Okay, started receiving a response. Everyone else, please make sure you're sending your responses in as well. We'll just take them up as they come in. Okay, and David, can you go ahead and read your response?
J. Robert Oppenheimer's role in developing the atomic bomb deeply shaped his life. Initially, he saw it as necessary to end World War II, but after witnessing its destruction, his views changed. He famously reflected, quote, "Now I am become death, and the destroyer of worlds." After the war, he opposed the hydrogen bomb and advocated for nuclear arms control. This stance led to political backlash, costing him his security clearance in 1954. Despite this, he continued promoting scientific ethics, showing how his experience shifted his perspective on nuclear weapons.
Okay, great job with your response. I just want to go over some points of improvement. So starting off with the initial support, you can further clarify it by mentioning his leadership role and belief in the bomb's necessity. So initially he did support it before he did start kind of not even hatred, but started having his own sense of fear towards his creation. Expand on opposition. Briefly state why he opposed the hydrogen bomb, because he was able to see the dangers it was able to bring upon, especially the fact that it can be potentially more powerful than the atomic bomb. Improve flow. You can integrate the famous quote more smoothly. It does kind of seem like it abruptly comes in. So the context you add before and after can be better to help integrate the quote more smoothly. In terms of your conclusion, you can make it a little bit more concise. Reinforce how his experiences shaped his stance. And David, do you have any questions about the provided feedback?
No.
Okay. And I'm still waiting for responses from everyone else. Please make sure you're sending it into the chat or pasting it onto the slides. Nathan, Austin, Kevin, and Liam. We are 3 minutes past the take-up time. Even if you're not done, responses should be sent in. Hey, Nathan, can you go ahead and read your response?
He was proud of himself, but now he had political enemies. People were sad about the death of 110,000 people and thought it wasn't worth it. He was liked by some people, but was seriously hated by become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Okay. All right. In general, more details are needed for your response, but a lot of the statements are too generalized or almost informal for the response that we're looking for. So let's take a look at some adjustments, starting off with the first one, clarify his feelings. You write that he was proud of himself, which is much too simplistic because his emotions were complex. He was initially prideful of his invention, but it was mixed with much more like much more regret later on, and the regret is the biggest factor of his personal feelings. Improve the historical accuracy. The phrase "people were sad" oversimplifies the global reaction. Consider mentioning the ethical debate instead. We're talking about human lives, and especially that at a large scale. So when we talk about consequences like that, saying people were sad is much too overly simplistic. Fix informality. He was liked by some people, or he was liked by some people. Should be he was respected by some, but deeply criticized by others. And you can also integrate the quote better. Instead of just saying he was sad, clarify that the quote reflects his remorse after witnessing the bomb's effects. Nathan, do you have any questions about the provided feedback?
No.
Okay, and Austin, can you go ahead and read your response?
Julius Robert Oppenheimer played a big part in the Manhattan Project, which was a secret program to create the atomic bomb during World War II. His work made him famous and respected, but also caused him to feel a lot of guilt because he realized how powerful and dangerous these weapons were. After the war, Oppenheimer became worried about the future of humanity and the destruction that nuclear bombs could cause. He started to speak out about the need for control and peace instead of using these weapons in wars. This change in his thinking showed how the responsibility of creating such a powerful weapon affected both his personal feelings and his career.
Okay, great job. And okay, just to go over some small changes, you can change played a big part into was a key figure. It just sounds much more formal and precise. When it comes to improving on your points, you can clarify his guilt, briefly explain what led to his remorse, most likely witnessing the bomb's effects. For your conclusion, you can further strengthen it by writing, instead of this change in his thinking, specify how it impacted his career. For example, his loss of security clearance or his advocacy for arms control. But otherwise, really good job with your response. I like the formatting and the overall content that you have provided in it. Oh, didn't mean to make this all red. Second. And also, do you have any questions about the provided feedback?
Nope.
Okay. And Kevin, can you go ahead and read your response?
The Manhattan Project affected Oppenheimer's personal journey by shaping his later job. After the Manhattan Project, Oppenheimer went to teach at the Ward Academy of Science and Art, where he lectured people about ethics. He lectured about ethics because he hoped to influence future scientists to use science responsibly. This shows that the Manhattan Project shaped his personal and professional journey. Oppenheimer's view of the atomic bomb after the project also changed. After the war, he lobbied against nuclear proliferation, but during the bombing of Hiroshima, he actually wished that he could have used the bomb more, more, because his one regret was that he didn't finish the bomb in time to attack Germany.
Okay, great job with your response. Okay, let me just paste this onto another slide. I just have some small points to go over. A lot of it, like everything in your terms of your writing is fine, but there's a lot of inaccuracies. So starting off with Oppenheimer, he did not teach at the World Academy of Science and Art. He became the director of the Institute for Advanced Study at Princeton. In terms of ethical advocacy, he spoke about ethics but focused more on nuclear arms control and policy rather than general scientific responsibility. So he himself didn't have a lot to say when it came to ethical advocacy about scientific responsibility until later on. And then there is kind of like an evident misinterpretation of his views, especially near the end. You mentioned that you mentioned Germany and his regret about not being able to make it in time. So while he initially justified the bomb's use, he later strongly opposed nuclear proliferation. The claim that he wished he had used it more is misleading. His regret about Germany was about the bomb's timing, not eagerness for more destruction. So if you can clarify that a little bit further, that would actually be accurate as well. Just wanted to go over those corrections. And Kevin, do you have any questions about the provided feedback?
No.
Okay. And Liam, can you go ahead and read your response?
Julius Robert Oppenheimer was a very smart person who was born in New York City in 1904. He graduated from Harvard and got his doctorate at the age of 27 after the United States joined Allies. At the age of 23. After the United States joined Allies in 1941, Oppenheimer was asked to participate in the top secret Manhattan Project. Oppenheimer assembled a group of people which soon helped the United States invent the nuclear bomb. Then on July 16, 1945, the first nuclear blast in the world was attempted with a nuclear bomb named Gadget. Soon, on August 6 and 9, the two nuclear bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. A minimum 110,000 people have died, and Oppenheimer also wrote a letter to the Secretary of War or warning that the safety of the nation cannot lie wholly or even primarily in its scientific or technical prowess. It can be based only on making future war impossible. At first, he thought the atomic bomb was a great invention, but now he himself even thinks that the atomic bomb is a destructive and powerful weapon that could destroy the world in seconds.
Okay, great job with your response. Let me just go over some points of improvement. All right, starting off with refining the sentence structure. So Oppenheimer assembled a group of people which soon helped the United States invent the nuclear bomb. It should rather be written Oppenheimer led a team of scientists who helped develop the atomic bomb. And even minor errors like the first nuclear blast in the world was attempted should be the world's first nuclear test was conducted. So a lot of sentences are kind of worded a little bit differently. They sound overly complicated and it does kind of take away from the flow of reading. So make sure you do read it and just try and make everything as clear and straightforward as possible. When it comes to a little bit more clarity on his changing views, his views evolved over time. Rather than stating he thought it was a great invention, emphasize his initial justification and later moral concerns. Because initially he thought he was just doing his part, he was just contributing to his country and to scientific discovery. Improve flow and conclusion. The ending is repetitive and can be more polished. Liam, do you have any questions about the provided feedback?
No.
Okay, let's move on to the second question. Do you believe it is ever justifiable to pursue scientific advancements with potentially devastating consequences for humanity in the name of progress? In your opinion, what factors should be taken into account when determining the boundaries of scientific research and its impact on society? Use the article directly reference evidence to support your response. And yeah, we'll work on this activity for about 10 minutes, let's say 12 minutes, since the other one did take a little bit of extra time. We'll work on this until 8:15. Before we get started, does anyone have any questions? Okay, again, we'll take up this activity at 8:15. If anyone does have any questions at any point, feel free to ask me. Okay, just let you finish up with your sentence. Okay, everyone else, the time is 8:15. Please make sure you're sending in your responses or pasting it onto the slides. Okay, Nathan, can you go ahead and read your response?
I don't think we should try to create dangerous weapons because will cause death to people who did nothing wrong. Other countries will eventually find how it works and then create even more dangerous weapons. You should limit the area of how much damage it has. Destroying a smaller area is much better than destroying a whole country.
Okay, I just want to go over some points of improvements. Starting off with clarifying the argument, the response focuses only on weapons. You can consider broader scientific advancements with risks, for example, AI or genetic engineering. Strengthen your reasoning. Explain why limiting damage is better rather than just stating it. And improve structure and coherence. The last two sentences need clearer connections to the main ideas. So when you write, we should limit the area of how much damage it has. Destroying a small area is much better than destroying a whole country, because that seems like it comes out of nowhere. There needs to be enough context for you to come up to that idea. Okay, and Nathan, do you have any questions about the provided feedback?
No.
Okay, and Kevin, can you go ahead and read your response?
Wait, can I add something else to it?
Okay, yeah, sure. Okay, Liam, can you go ahead and read your response?
From my point of view, sometimes it is justifiable to pursue scientific advancements with devastating consequences in the name of progress. I believe in this because sometimes you have to do it or else your opponent would beat you to it. For example, in World War II, if the United States did not first invent the nuclear bomb, then Germany would invent it and they would most likely use it for worse reasons. So sometimes pursuing dangerous scientific inventions may not be wrong. However, there are some things you would take into account when making scientific research. If you're not in a situation where if you don't get it first, then your country is going to perish, then you want to put some boundaries. So every time you try to invent something new, you would want to think that if it would harm us by doing so.
Okay. Yeah, great job with your response. I just want to go over some points of correction. Okay, let me just paste this on another slide. Starting off with clarifying the justification, the response focuses on war but does not address other areas where dangerous advancements might be considered. Same thing I mentioned with Nathan. It could be AI, it could be biotechnology like genetic engineering, but there are other possibilities where scientific advancements can cause much more bigger danger than just weapons. Oh, I'm sorry, I pasted this into the wrong slide. My apologies. Okay. You can also improve logical flow. The argument about boundaries should connect more clearly to the idea of justifiable advancements. Refine sentence structure. Some sentences are wordy or unclear. For example, if you're not in a situation where if you don't get it first, then your country is going to perish. So going back to that sentence over here, we can just change this to something like, as a nation, if you are not in a position to be ahead in the race for advancements, you most likely would face dire consequences. Something along the lines of that would get across your point, but it would be much more simpler and easy to understand without being awkward. So a couple of your sentences are a little bit too complex. Again, as I mentioned, try and think about how to simply state your ideas without overcomplicating your sentences, because a lot of the times the sentences don't end up making sense. Okay, and Kevin, can you go ahead and read your response?
I believe it is not justifiable to pursue scientific advancement with potentially warning consequences unless it is to end another dangerous thing. For example, atomic bomb was created because intelligence reports showed that the Nazis might create one first. If Nazis had the atomic bomb, this could lead to all sorts of horrendous situations. But if Allies got it first, they could bomb Germany to force them to surrender. This will ultimately stop Germany from developing the atomic bomb. This shows that the atomic bomb was meant to stop another dangerous situation. But again, this is a case where dangerous advancement was made to stop another dangerous advancement. Otherwise, possibly dangerous scientific advancements are not made to stop other dangerous things, should not be made because our lives and humanity's existence is much more important.
Okay, great job with your response. Just want to go over some points of improvement, starting off with clarifying the argument. The example is clear, but the response would benefit from explaining more about the broader implications of dangerous advancements beyond just the atomic bomb. Because again, remember the atomic bomb was something that was maybe what was it, like 70 years back? So we're talking about right now. What exactly are the major implications we can compare it to right now? What can we see in the modern day where we can say this new invention or this new advancement, for example, the AI race, countries are legitimately racing to advance the furthest with an AI usage. Is that now something to fear? Is that not something to be fearful of? And those are scientific implications that are beyond just weapons. And honestly, they are, if anything, more like it wouldn't be devastating consequences where it's right away and immediate, but AI does have large implications in the future. In terms of structure and flow, the paragraph could be more concise and have clear transitions between ideas. Some sentences could be simplified for clarity. The conclusion can also be further tightened. The concluding statement could be stronger by emphasizing the importance of safety and ethical considerations in scientific progress. Okay, and give me a second while I paste in the next response. Okay, Austin, can you go ahead and read your response?
I think it's important to be careful when pursuing scientific advancements that could harm humanity. While progress can lead to amazing discoveries, we must consider the potential risks and consequences. For example, scientists should think about how their work could affect people, the environment, and future generations. If a discovery could cause more harm than good, it might be better to pause and rethink. When deciding the boundaries of scientific research, several factors should be taken into account. First, the safety of people and the planet should always come first. Second, scientists should consider ethical questions like whether their work respects human rights. Finally, public opinion is important. Involving the communities in discussions can help ensure that scientific advancements benefit everyone and not just a few.
Okay, so in terms of points of improvement, you can first start off by clarifying the focus. The response is focused on the broader approach to scientific advancement, but adding specific examples of harmful advancements like nuclear weapons or AI could strengthen the argument. So try and have at least one example included in there. In terms of strengthening the conclusion, the last point about public opinion is great, but it could be more tightly connected to the overall argument about balancing progress with caution. Conciseness. Some parts of the response are a bit repetitive, such as the mention of risks and consequences, and considering how their work could affect people. So you can find different ways of phrasing those same aspects without sounding a little too repetitive. And Austin, do you have any questions about the provided feedback?
No.
Hey, David, can you go ahead and read?
Developing dangerous technology is justifiable only with strict ethical safeguards. Progress should prioritize human well-being over unchecked innovation, ensuring risks are carefully managed. Without responsibility, advancement becomes a threat, not a benefit.
Okay, in terms of points of improvement, you can expand the explanation. Again, it just feels a little too short to actually get into too much ideas to actually explore anything to the full extent. You briefly touch on the importance of ethical safeguards and the responsibility, but adding a specific example like nuclear weapons or AI could help make your point stronger. Balance the tone. The final sentence is more impactful, but you might want to slightly soften the tone for a more nuanced conclusion, ensuring it feels more balanced. Okay, and one thing I did notice amongst everyone's responses in general, it is something that I do want to make sure everyone does keep in mind. I just want to check in one more time just to make sure. Yeah. So a lot of you are usually focused on quickly writing the response itself, but for the first one, we did see a little bit more evidence used. I do see much more evidence used in the first one compared to the second one. In the second one thing I noticed amongst I think almost all of you is that no direct evidence was used from the text. So please make sure, especially for any of these type of responses, it is always used in. Again, as we see in the instructions over here, it clearly does state, just like it did for the first one, so use article to directly reference evidence to support your responses. So I do kind of want to include that in everyone's thing over here, include evidence. And we'll just bold this just so everyone remembers. We were supposed to go through a second writing activity. I don't think we're going to have the time to get through that. So most likely you are going to come back for homework and you're going to take the opportunity to fix your responses. So in that time, everyone should try and find evidence and include it for their responses as well. And you can definitely find evidence directly from the article and make your own connections back to the modern day. So that itself is a little bit more of a complex exercise. And this, we'll most likely take a look at it for next week. All right, so in terms of the homework, review all materials and be ready for a quiz. Review the feedback provided and apply provided feedback to all writing activities. It says review the vocabulary and creative writing lesson. We'll just make a review the vocabulary. And it says write a short story using the prompt from above. We didn't get to that prompt. So instead, I'm going to write complete the writing assignment below. So primarily put your focus into the writing assignment for the week, which we'll go over right now. Okay, so the writing assignment for the week is a biography on J. Robert Oppenheimer. So the article we read in general, it doesn't fully go into a complete biography, but it does really touch on a good amount of aspects for you to gain information on this person. If you do feel the need to do external research, you can do that as well. The amount of depth you put into this is really up to you. Again, the more effort you put in, the better practice it is for you. So I want you to write a well-structured biography of J. Robert Oppenheimer, focusing on his contributions to science, his role in the Manhattan Project, and the ethical dilemmas he faced. Your biography should include an introduction where you introduce Oppenheimer's significance, providing background on his work and its historical impact. For key life stages, you could discuss his early life, his scientific contributions, his leadership in the Manhattan Project, post-war challenges, and then legacy. Historical and ethical considerations. Analyze the impact of his work on nuclear warfare, Cold War politics, and scientific ethics. So beyond just a biography, talk about his work and the impact it had as well. For the conclusion, summarize his influence on history and why his story remains relevant. Guidelines: use credible sources, try and look for books, articles, historical records, anything where you could be like, this is legitimate information I'm reading. And it should be much easier to find because you're reading something that's historical, not something where a lot of opinions and viewpoints should be mixed in. Organize the biography chronologically with clear transitions. Maintain an objective and analytical tone, so avoid having too much of your own perspective. At the end of the day, this is just a biography. and make sure you cite all sources properly. Before I end off class, does anyone have any questions about the homework or the writing assignment? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and dismiss the class. I hope everyone has a great week ahead of themselves. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.